Go. Good day, guys. Today we are here with Diego Kelazhur Schwimmer or Schwimmer, um, our beloved Terran player from Brazil and the US, I think.
Yeah,
So, Diego, very welcome to you. Thank you for doing this. I hope you are well,
indeed I am.
not too jet lagged from
No,
Korea.
not at all. Well,
Okay,
maybe a
that's
little bit, but nothing significant.
yeah. Congratulations also to winning yesterday in the Copa America, no?
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Against Chem, I think.
Yeah, jump in the finals.
Very nice games. I watched it yesterday.
Glad you
So,
liked it.
yeah, no, definitely. Your Terran is at a good point at this moment, I think. So,
Mm.
Diego, I want to start off with a question that has been bothering me, a very deep question about your nickname. So, does it have any meaning? Is it how do you say it? Is it a Portuguese thing or is it something you made up or
It's first you say it Kelazhur. So
Kelazhur? Mm-hmm.
yeah, most people get it right, and it's just like a mashup between two Warcraft characters. So it's
Oh,
it's like nothing meaningful. It's just like a mashup with Kel'Thuzad and Ner'zhul, which are like two big characters in the Warcraft lore.
for sure. Very well known. Nice.
Mm.
So when did you make it up? Was it?
It was when I used to play World of Warcraft. They released an expansion called Wrath of the Lich King,
Mhm.
and it had a new class which was called a Death Knight. And I wanted it to sound badass, right? Because like Death Knight, need a cool name for a Death Knight. So that's how I came up with it, because it was the name of a lich combined with the name of a Lich King. So I just thought it sounded cool at the time.
Cool. Now I finally know. That's nice. And your I'm also curious about your surname, Schwimmer. So it is German? Does it have German roots? Okay,
Yes,
cool.
I believe my great grandparents were from Germany, and then they ended up migrating towards the US. So
Ah, okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So you grew up in the US or in Brazil?
I was born in the US, but I grew up in Brazil. I
Ah,
moved there when I was like 3, and I lived maybe 15, 16 years there.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
So that's for me very interesting because I also grew up in two cultures. So you returned to the US at one point, right?
I returned about 2 years ago.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Um, so how how do you see it at this point in time? So the differences between Brazil and the US. What is the big difference between the two countries for you?
I think in general, like, well, US is like a first world country, right? And Brazil is a third world country. So uh, US feels a lot more clean and a lot more secure, and in general, like just a lot more benefits for the people. As in Brazil, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's a little more sketch in those terms, like, but it's still a great country. Like the culture is pretty nice, the food, the weather. It's still a great place for me, and I enjoyed growing up there. But like, in terms of living conditions, I'd say the US is a lot more superior.
Hmm. So not missing the churrasco or the proper Brazilian food, the feijoada.
Every day, so much, man.
I'm with you, man. I still make it sometimes. Uh,
I wish I knew. I wish I knew how.
yeah. But nothing beats the feijoada of your mother, probably, or your grandmother, maybe.
Yeah, no, my mom's food, like, can't beat that.
Nice. Um, so now we are hinting already a bit at uh, your path in the last couple of years. So you grew up in Brazil, you moved to the US, And this is obviously also connected not only to maybe the story of your family, but also the path you choose as a StarCraft 2 pro player. Currently, I think you are living. Are you living in the Root Gaming House? Did I get that right?
Yeah, you did.
So, obviously, in the US, and on the West Coast.
Mhm.
I think 2 years ago, there you did an interview. It was in Portuguese, where you stated that you are planning to study and play full time. Um, how did that went? Are you actually studying on the side, or are you total full time programmer at this point in time?
I'm still a full-time pro gamer. I've been at it for 2 years now, and originally I think I planned to start college this year, but since it kind of was going well for me, and I figured like maybe I should just stay at it, see if I can get more improvement, and I postponed it for next year for now. So if I don't start next year, I'll definitely start the year after.
Okay. So I find that very interesting. So what you are actually saying, if I get you right, is it's difficult to do it both. You,
Yeah, indeed.
yeah. I mean, the level that you are playing at this point in time now is very high. So you couldn't keep that level if you study and play.
I think I could maintain it, but I would not improve any further.
Mm.
And what happens in StarCraft is that everyone naturally grows. So if everyone is growing and you're just maintaining your level, then you're gonna be left behind, you know. So
Mm.
it's hard to do both.
So you would say you didn't hit your ceiling yet. There's still room for growth.
Indeed, of course, always.
That's good. So you are keeping it at, yeah. Um, I'm smiling like that because uh, I find it very, very fascinating that I mean, really could see when I was doing research for this interview that um, there was a steady progression in a way. So you started on the lower brackets. You started in the Brazilian scene, or in the South American scene. Then you went up from there, WCS, and I think the first tournament you won was the breakout invitational. I actually asked him for an interview also, but yeah. Uh, so, um, how do you see yourself? So, you are aiming at this point in time to qualify. Did you qualify for Montreal? No, not yet, no?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did. Sorry, I mean BlizzCon. Sorry, BlizzCon.
Oh, right now I'm rank 6, and I have a lot of points, so my chances are really good. I would have to be pretty unlucky, I think, to not qualify.
Very nice. Yeah. So winning BlizzCon is that the goal?
I think I'd put it more like top 4.
Okay. But yeah, that sounds realistic actually at this point in time. At least for me as an outsider and fan watching you play. So, but we will come to BlizzCon a bit later. I want to ask some other questions around that also. The BlizzCon thing in Montreal, obviously, that is coming up. But I want to talk a bit also about GSL versus the world. For me as a viewer, it was a fantastic tournament. I enjoyed it very much. Although obviously the team fights were quite tough for the foreigner team.
Mm-hmm.
And you stood out with the one win that we had. So congratulations on that. How would you describe your experience? How was it to be part of such a tournament for you?
It was amazing because, like, only a few years ago I was watching the previous GSL versus the World. It was back in like 2011, I think, or 2012. And like at the time I was just a Masters player, probably low Masters, and I was watching like these guys take on Korea and Stefano almost all killing Korea. That was really sick, like I could only dream of being like right next to those guys playing with them. And then like here I am a few years later, like playing with the 8 best players of the world, taking on Korea. So it was truly an amazing experience, and the event was very well produced. So I enjoyed it a lot.
Anything that stands out for you personally? What was one of your highlights, except maybe the win over TI?
I think the highlight was probably, besides the games, I would say the opening ceremony. Like, I checked the VODs on stream and it doesn't seem as cool as when you're personally there. Like, it was so loud and the curtains dropping and everyone cheering really hard, and like everyone's doing their own poses with the introductions, and then they walk and get on stage. The interview was really cool. You got to say what you wanted to say. They gave us a lot of freedom to do our own thing and be ourselves. So I think that was the highlight, the opening ceremony.
Nice. And regarding the games, how do you feel
The
about
games,
the games?
well, my game versus TY was pretty crazy, but I think the best one was definitely Sorrow versus Innovation. It was like probably like the best foreigner or top 3 best foreigner against the best Korean, and like the skill was insanely high, and it was an insanely close game. I thought that was really cool to watch.
So we should check out the VODs, obviously. What would you maybe change if you could change something? What would you maybe try to improve as a player, from the view of the player?
For the team or for myself?
Both.
As myself, I would probably I would take a calmer approach. Like, I'm not sure. It's hard to say because from my perspective now, it's very easy to say the things that I could have done different. But when I think about from my perspective of when I'm there, I feel like I didn't really do anything wrong. I did everything in like my skill and my power and my vision to make sure that that game went to my side. So I'm not sure. But as a team, we would probably change the lineups, I guess. I feel like we approached the map picks incorrectly. So we could have thought maybe a few steps ahead and try to predict what they were going to play on each map, and maybe try to play around that. So we could have improved that for sure.
How do you feel? I find that very interesting. I was doing an interview with No Regret Jake Umbleby earlier, and we were discussing the whole topic of team leagues. That obviously Pro League is not there anymore, and there's actually a lack of proper teams like we had in the Pro League, where you have this whole thing of you have snipers, you have specific preparations for the other team. How do you feel about the whole topic of team leagues and Pro League? Now you're mentioning you could have probably approached the whole team fight differently. Do you feel we need Pro League back, or some form of team league?
Well, team leagues are always great, but the problem with team leagues nowadays is since most of the Caspa teams disbanded, and they were like the biggest teams in esports, and they invested so much into the players, like the players on those teams, they could have afford to focus completely on Pro League, They could be doing bad in everything else, but as long as they were doing well in Pro League, that's fine because they're getting full support from their teams, who are big, like huge teams in Caspa. But now that they're gone, like the teams that are left in general are teams that don't give nearly as much support to the players as Caspa for obvious reasons and financial state of StarCraft. So even if you make a team league, like it'll be very hard to for make players focus on that as much as players focus on Pro League, because in the end of the day, like what matters more for at least like for foreign players is WCS, and Korean players are gonna focus on GSL because they're not getting big salaries from their Caspa teams anymore.
So basically, you would say pro leagues or team leagues would be good, but at this current point in time, the setup, excuse me, of the industry is difficult. Obviously, for financial reasons mainly, but yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
I find that a big point. How the finances also impact the development of the industry, obviously. Yeah. So, but you are part of a team. You are
Indeed.
part of a very well-known organization, Root Gaming. You joined them in 2015, 14, 15. And since then you have been with them. So you are happy with your team at this point in time.
Yeah, they're like a family to me, and been here for 2 years, and they've done a lot for me, so I'm happy with them.
Cool. So, uh, I mean, are you? How many guys are staying with you now at this point in time?
In the team,
Yeah, like in the team house.
in the team house, we don't have many people. Like it's just me, Cats, and Drew right now.
Mhm.
He's staying for a few days.
Okay. So
Yeah.
okay, that's very. That's so everyone has enough space for themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
indeed.
nice. So we talked about GSL versus the world. We talked about team leagues, and behind all that is obviously the game that we love, StarCraft 2. You have been playing actively for many years now. Um, and how would you see the game itself when we look at the game now, StarCraft 2? Do you feel the state of the game at this point in time, for you as a Terran player, uh, is okay? Is it balanced? Do you feel you need another unit, or should Zerg all play with the handicap, or what do you feel about the state of the game at this point in time?
I think we're at a pretty good point in the game. I would do some changes, but I would mostly do it for gameplay purposes and not balance purposes. But I think for what we have right now, I think it's at a pretty good balance, and it's pretty impressive that they managed to do it after so many changes.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they could work closely with the players to improve the game even further.
What you mentioned changes that you would maybe want to make. What would that be,
It,
for example?
um, I think this Cyclone could use some work. I think right now it's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty stale unit still.
Mm-hmm.
They complained a lot about it at first, but people just let it die out because they knew they weren't gonna change the Cyclone anyways. But for me personally, I feel like the Goliath would be a much better fit,
Okay.
and it would serve a similar purpose, except they would have a much better anti-air, like a mobile anti-air.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, you could probably work with like changing the Thor completely or like reworking the Thor, and you will have like a really cool composition for people to watch with tanks, Hellbats, and Goliaths in TVZ matchup. I think that will be really exciting for people to watch. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
Could you elaborate a bit more on um, why you would exchange the Cyclone for the Goliath? So you said, so basically the Cyclone doesn't have a proper function in the game at this point in time.
Like it does, but only for early and mid game,
Yeah.
like really early mid game.
Okay.
So I feel like So Mech's anti-air is Thor, right? Which completely nullifies the mutas and is not really good against anything else. So I feel like with the Goliaths, you solve the Mech's anti-air problem, but you don't completely disrupt the air units. Like mutas are still good against Goliaths. They don't do splash damage, but it kind of makes it even, you know, like maybe if you have enough Goliaths against enough mutas, you can make it like a close fight. So that makes it for a lot more interesting than like, oh, I have two Thors, like I don't care about your 45 mutas, right? So, and then and then you can like rework the Thor,
Okay.
and there you go. You have like a mech army that isn't completely invincible, but kind of like fights straightforward with the Zerg army, and then
Okay.
decides like you want fights to be as even as possible. You don't want fights to be like this army counters that army. You want to avoid one-sided fights as much as possible, I feel, and I think the Goliath will be great with that and reworking the Thor and the Viper.
So, and the Viper. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking now I'm listening to you. So I'm trying to make sense of the setup then. So wouldn't it? So what you're trying to change basically is the situation where you maybe have what we saw now at Shoutcraft, um, like all the time Mass Oracle. They played all. The Protoss played all Mass Oracle. Neeb was just doing that, I think, for like four games or 5 games, and was winning all of them. Um, so basically, that is not easy to counter. So you would try to avoid similar scenarios where you have an army that is unbeatable. So
Yeah.
as a Zerg, yeah, okay, sorry.
It's more so that to avoid fights that should be close that are not being close.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
like let's say like 150 supply Zerg against 130 supply mech, and then the fight is just completely close, or I mean completely one-sided, even though the compositions are like not wrong for the Zerg per se. Like that's the example I can give is that like the fights could be a lot closer and they could be happen a lot more often as long as you made mech a little bit more mobile and a little bit less weaker with the Goliath.
So it would winning the fights would go more in direction of strategic or tactical decisions, right? I mean, then you would to win the game. I mean, not the fight, but the game. Then, so it's not a death ball that is invincible, but now you have to be much more tactical in your approach how to win the game.
Indeed, there will be more trades throughout the map because Goliaths, like in big numbers, they don't really add up. They're not splash units. I think splash in general is unhealthy for the game.
Very interesting for me. Thank you very much. I mean, we got very technical at the end now, but I mean, we're talking StarCraft, so it can get technical at some points. We will take a very short technical break on this time, and then we will be back in a second.